Microsoft Office Excel 2003 Data and Content Formatting Cells. We're going to primarily be concentrating on our data and content formatting in the cells themselves for this video. We're going to talk about things like fonts and text formats, like do you do bolding or italicize? How do you do that? It's fairly straightforward, hasn't changed too much. Borders and shading, text alignment, and the beautiful and always fun-loving auto format. Now, just because Excel deals with a lot of numbers and formulas and data, it doesn't mean that it has to look bad. In fact, as my Midwest relatives would like to say, it can clean up real nice. For example, I went ahead and opened up one of these Excel workbooks that I did a little bit of work on beforehand. It's called Unformatted PTO Content. By the way, this file is available to you as part of your subscription. You merely download it. That way you can manipulate it and deal with it yourself, just like you see me. Now, when you take a look at this, you've got text, obviously, and it looks like what I'm doing here is a paid time off worksheet that I'm trying to work on. I got my employees over here, Chris, Dan, Jeremy, James, all the way down to Christina. I'll have their identifications, the date of birth, the paid time off available, the paid time off used. Now, these are the beginnings of a good worksheet. But if you look at this, you might say, whoa, this looks pretty blah. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to spice it up a little bit. That way you can make tables of data a lot easier to read. You can use character formatting to show different categories of information, all merely by utilizing formatting. Now you'll see that the first thing I've done is I went ahead and I typed in the employees' names, and I made employee, it's going to be the head of this particular column. The identification is going to be the head of this column, and DOB is going to be the head of this column, and so on. So we've got a good start right now. Now, because they're my headers, I might want to have maybe a different font for these. So what I can do is I can select either the one single cell, come up here and notice I can change the font if I wanted to maybe change the font to something like Arial Black. So I can click on Arial Black. I think that's one that most of you should have on your machines. And you'll notice it says, oh, okay, we've now changed the font for that particular cell. Now, if I want a range of cells and to change those, I can select them by clicking and dragging. And now I can come up here and say, you know what? I want that same Arial Black used for that one as well. Check that out. It's changed every single one of these to the Arial Black. Now up here I can also do formatting on the content by using the size of the font. I can change boldness, maybe italicize everything. Let's go ahead and italicize it all. And now it's got everything set up with italics. Of course, I'll need to come back over here and change this one to italics if I want that the same way. And once I've clicked and selected, you can see I've now changed the format of what is in those cells. Now, one other thing that I can do here is also I can do it, by utilizing the toolbar, the format toolbars that I have here. I can also right-click on a group of cells. So let's say I want to go ahead and select all of these cells, A1 all the way to E1, and I decide I want to format. I can right-click, and you remember we have the Format Cells menu. So when I click on the Format Cells, it's going to say, okay, you've got all these different things you can do to the cells. Now, we discussed on how numbers are treated in a previous video. We even talked a little bit about alignment, but if I want to go directly to the font, I can come here and select the different fonts, my font style, along with the size, whether I want it underlined or not, and then look at this. I can even change the color. Right now it's automatically set for black because that's where everything is. But if I wanted to, I can click down here and say I want my headers to be more of a darkish blue, dark blue right there. So I click on that. I've now set that to be the color that I'm going to use. I can use effects if I want to strike through. You'll notice it'll show you what it's going to look like right here in the preview. If I click on the strike through, it'll strike through everything. Well, maybe I want to do that for certain things. Or superscript, where it goes up above where the normal line is. Or I can do subscript, where it goes down below. These are all different ways that I can manipulate just the font, and this is how I can format the content within it. Now once I'm done here and I click OK, I come back and look at this. Let me select off of that, and you can see that it's now employees in blue. It's still italicized. It's still using the Arial black, so it's the kind of the bolded, big, huge look that we have. Now let's say I also wanted to do something different to the actual cells. Maybe I want to put a border around each one of these. No problem. Let me go ahead and select all of the ones I'm going to use, the PTO used, all the way to employee. I again right click, and this time when I click on Format Cells, one of my choices is border. So when I click on border, it says right now, how do you want the border to be on your cells? Notice right now, even though we have that kind of grayed out border, if I printed it out, it wouldn't show anything. Now I can do an outline where I outline the whole entire selection. That means all the way from the one side over here. You can kind of see where my arrow is. Let me move this for just a second. It would take and outline it all the way from here around with one single line. And you can see that here as well, because it says, look, I'm going throughout the whole selection and drawing a box around the outline. Now if I want the inside, I can click the inside as well, and now each particular cell will have a border around it. I can even be more particular. Maybe I only want something down below. I can take off the outline, or I can say none and start over. Let's say I only want something underneath, and then on one end and on the other end I want a box. See, I can do just about anything I want. I can even change the line style by saying I want a double line. So let me click on the double line, and now it's going to add a double line around that. I can say I want to color and change the color of the border. Since I have dark blue, maybe I want to match my border to my text. I can go ahead and click dark blue as well. And now when I click OK, click off, you'll notice all I have is that one line underneath that identifies that, hey, I want something underneath here. I want those boxes or those particular cells to have that underneath line. Now we should probably point out that many of the formatting things that we do with the right click can also be accomplished up here on your toolbars. For example, we talked about adding borders. Well, here's our borders button right now. So if I wanted to highlight all of these cells and do formatting upon them, I can go up here and say I want to add some borders. This time, let's say I want to add a thick box border, and I want to add, this, whatever it is, I can quickly add it just by selecting. And if I want to, I can even draw borders. Check this out. If I click on the draw borders, I can say, hey, what type of border do I want to use? Do I want to draw it? Do I want to erase it? What's the line style? What's the line color? Let's say I want to add a dash dot. I want the line color to be, we'll say red. I can then select my cells, and notice as I drag, it starts adding all of this red checkbox. And now I've added this border around the cells that I've decided to put a red check dot dash on. So again, there are many different ways of doing formatting, and primarily we're going to be showing you a lot of the right click or the toolbar techniques. I can also erase anything if I want, because, I mean, look at that. Oh, that's bad. It's just bad looking. I can select the Erase Border button, select the cells. Now, I want you to notice something. When I select it, it's selecting cell by cell as I move across. Now, I've also selected some actual text, some content. Now, will I lose that? Nope. It only affects the formatting of the borders. So any of the borders that are around the cell, the content still remains safe. So let's go ahead and close this. Now let's say I wanted to go ahead and add maybe a little bit more to my headers. I mean, that's good that they're italicized and they're dark blue and they've got a line underneath. Let's go ahead and maybe add a background to it to kind of further identify them as headings. I mean, the more that we can do to identify and to clarify which is the header and which is the actual data is better when we're looking at tables. So in this case, I've selected these, right click, click Format Cells. And let's say I've got my border and I want to go ahead and do the total outline, and I also want the inside, so it takes care of that. I want each one of those identified. Look at patterns. Click on patterns. Here I can add color. I can add patterns to the back. I can add like grayscale here, like 50% gray, 75 solid. I can put the colors, the different colors and types. I can put even like a crosshatch, like little crisscross behind it, and reverse diagonal stripe. So I have a lot of options, right? You got that. But instead, I'm going to go ahead and just stick with the color. I'm going to go with the light gray. I think dark blue goes over light gray. I'm not a color expert, so please, please don't write in emails saying, "Hey, your color scheme's horrible." Well, I know that. So here we got our gray background. Now this is going to be within our cell. Is going to be the background of that particular cell, and we already know what our border is going to be with that nice thick line that we have there. Outline and inside. We know our font we're using is the Arial black. We're using the dark blue color. So notice I can still go back and manipulate that within my Format Cells dialog box. But let me go ahead and click OK and click off here so you can see that now I've got my light gray background. I have my nice thick borders showing up. So when I print this out, it's going to say, hey, these are headers. These are the headers for the information that I want. And you can feel really confident by looking at that. Now, as we continue to format, I know something's been bugging you. I know it. I can see it through the computer screen into your eyes. You notice that I've got employee here and identification. This is actually identification badge, but I don't see it. It's cut off because of the column width and because I didn't tell this thing to do like a word wrap. Well, how do I do that? How do I make sure that I can see everything and it doesn't get chopped off? Well, there's two ways. One, we will see when we take a look at how to adjust columns and rows. But another way that we can do this is with word wrap. And a lot of people like that. I want to set up my cells to automatically, when it gets to the end of the cell or the column width or the row, or in this case column width, it will automatically wrap around and start typing down below. How do we do that? Well, we right click on these cells. We'll go ahead and say it for all of our headers. Once again, Format Cells. And now we'll go over to the alignment. See here on the alignment, we have a couple of things that are going on. Number one, when we talk about where the text is in the cells, it is typically horizontally, it is what they call general, which means that it just follows whatever the general thing. We can do left indent, we can center it, we can right indent, we can fill it, we can justify, center across selection. We can do a lot of things horizontally. Vertically, I have it towards the bottom of a cell. So as cells grow, and let's say or I should say the row height gets bigger vertically, it will keep the text kind of snug against the bottom. We'll show you what that looks like here when we do wrap text. So I can go ahead and say I want to shrink to fit, which means if I can automatically have it change its size to fit the particular text that I've typed in. Or I can do the wrap text, which allows me to wrap it from one side to the other. So if I want to just wrap the text, let's say we can do that. I go ahead and click OK. Watch what happens. It goes to the end, and then it starts putting the characters. And here is one aspect that, of course, with long words can get you in trouble. Look, it says employee down here, or identification badge, or PTO available. I mean, that doesn't look good at all, does it? So even though we have word wrap, and notice these two were the tallest of the two, notice my text gravitates to the bottom because of the setting. Let's go ahead and highlight this again, go back to format, and watch again. See, I said I want it to stick to the bottom. Now watch what happens when I click on, you know what? I want to justify it. I want to make sure that it stays kind of in the middle, or say I want to keep it centered. So I click OK. Now it centers all the text again into the middle of the cells, no matter how big this gets. So if I select on this, I'll start typing some more identification badge for CBT Nuggets people. Now that's a lot. So I hit enter, it'll move down. Watch. See, notice how the employee, even though it's still word wrapping, it now goes into the center, and this becomes, obviously a lot larger as I continue to type. But it doesn't look very good. Even though I'm word wrapping, it isn't adjusting to the size of the word, which is, very important. So let me come back here, and I'm going to say I don't want that what I just typed, so I click delete here. Let's go ahead and select this and watch what happens here. So I'm going to right click and go back to the format. You might say, well, obviously, instead of wrapping the text, why don't we just shrink to fit? That'll obviously work, right? Well, recognize what you are doing is you're not adjusting at this point the column or the row size. You're not doing that. you're adjusting what's happening within the cells that you're formatting. So when I click OK, watch this. Oh, wow. That, boy, talk about really shrinking. Look, I can't even read that. It shrunk the font down to some minuscule size. So if I deselect off of it, look at that. And this one's small and this one's small. DOB is about the only one that's the same size because it was able to fit. Well, let me click the undo here. That'll bring it back to where it was. And this time, if I really want to change how this works, I am going to have to fit the text within either the context of the column, or I'm going to have to change the columns. Now we're going to see how to do that in the next video, so don't go anywhere. Okay, I minimized my really bad work of art, but I want to show you something here. Let me bring up the original unformatted PTO. I went ahead and had that sitting in the background there, brought it up here. And notice, okay, this is what I had. Now, let's say I have to get to a meeting real quick. I've got less than 5 minutes, and I'm inputting this data, and I want to make sure it looks good. You know, I'm making a presentation for the boss or a friend, and I want to look nice. Well, do I have time to go in and just do formatting and check it? No, maybe not. Well, if I don't, I can use auto format. So let me show you. Let me go ahead and select all the original stuff I had here, and I come up to Format, click Format, then click on Auto Format. This is going to bring up all the different options that I have here. And hey, take a look. There's dark blue. It must be one of them. That's the classic 3. I can do simple. I can do classic 2. If I want different colors, I can come down here and do colorful 2 or colorful 1 just by selecting them. Now, if I do select, like, let's say colorful 2, and I don't really want the font to change. I like the Times New Roman that I have or whatever the fonts I originally typed in. I can click Options and say, look, don't change the fonts. Go back to what it is, because right now it's just Times New Roman. But I do like the numbers, the borders, the alignment, and all the other patterns and things that I do. Well, in this case, since it doesn't really matter, I'll go ahead and select everything. But you can see how you can have options here. So I go up and I click Option or the OK button, and voila! Take a look. I've now, and look what all it did. It changed the font to italicize it. It's in Arial font now. That's just great. And it's now italicized. Look at the size, though, also of the columns. They've automatically changed for the size of what I typed in. Identification badge, PTO available. They all shrunk to the, or expanded to the right size. This is great because now it looks a lot sharper. It looks a lot nicer. And all I had to do was select the cells that I want to use the auto format on, hit auto format, select the one I want, and boom, there it is. It's great for those last minute presentations or programs or documents you need to print up. And so again, auto format is your friend. So in this video, we took a look at a few things. Number one, we took a look at how we can change the fonts and the text formats, how to do italics and bolding and underlining, change the font to maybe a different type. Maybe you want it more of a fun type font. You can do that. Borders and shading as well. We can add borders to each one of those cells. So either add them underneath or we can add them on top, on the sides. We can shade the individual cells so that way they look a little bit different, maybe for our headers or for some of our columns. We also took a look at text alignment. Now that means, when you have text in your cell, does it go to the top? Does it go to the bottom? What happens if it's too large? Do you allow it to word wrap? You got it. And then finally, we call it the ever fun-loving auto format. Whenever you need just to quickly take some of your data and create it maybe in a table format that looks nice, you can use auto format and it will add the header colors and the fonts and the alignments and do it all for you rather quickly. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.